A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, it is a period of discovering identity and standing strong in that knowledge while the world pushes back. A story that has seen many incarnations gains a new telling, studded with stars, music, and strength, while keeping the hope, love, and endurance that let its roots grow deep. From page to screen to stage and now to screen again, it's beautiful, and it's here. Hello there, and welcome back to 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. I'm your host, Sam Marcioni, and joining me today, only one guest, but a very special guest, Sydney McGahey.
Hello! I'm so happy to be here again. It's been so long.
Oh, so long, and what a movie to come back on. We're talking about the natural endpoint of the book to movie to movie musical pipeline of The Color Purple. It's a degree 3 because of the presence of a very young and very talented actor, Jamal Avery Jr., who plays young Harpo in this movie and is known in the Young Jedi Adventures as Kai Brightstar. I hope that kid's going places. So, both of us here have theater kid pedigrees to an extent, but The Color Purple was actually one that unfortunately didn't really catch on my radar as much. I remember the 2016 Tony's performances because how can you not? But this movie, when I saw it in theaters, was actually my first time seeing the musical, and I didn't read the book or see the Whoopi Goldberg movie. I wanted to do both of those things before we did this episode. I did one of those things, I read the book, but did not get around to the Goldberg movie or listening to any of the cast recordings. My deepest apologies to LaShawns and to Cynthia Erivo. What about you? How deeply is The Color Purple ingrained in you? Because I know it's probably a very different experience for you than it was for me.
Oh, yeah, so I know about The Color Purple, but I have family members who are old, so they remember actually when the book came out and when the film came out, the original 1985 film. So my mother had the book and she read it, and so did both of my aunts. And I remember when my aunt said that when she first saw the 1985 film in theaters, when spoilers, well, it's almost a 40-year-old movie, so it's like, is it really spoilers at this point?
There are some things where the statute of limitations on spoilers has definitely passed.
But when Nettie and Celie get separated by Mister, she said, I was crying so hard and so bad. It was like I was hysterical. It was like I needed to be taken to the hospital. It was that much. It was that emotional for me, that scene. So The Color Purple is, I would say, like a big deal in the Black community. I also read the book and read the movie. I read the book. I finished the book last year and I read it. There's also like controversy when the film originally came out because Spike Lee was a famous critic of it because he said it made black men look very bad based on how the black male characters acted in the novel and in the film as well. Personally, I disagree with that statement, but we can discuss that later. There's also discussion of how the film was snubbed in the 1986 awards, especially with Whoopi Goldberg for Best Actress. She did not win Best Actress for this film. It was given to Geraldine Page, who was at that time a Hollywood legend. So, and she was older, so they figured, you know what, we have to give her something before she passes, and she was given the Best Actress award.
Yeah, I've never seen the Trip to Bountiful movie, but I do know that Cicely Tyson went on to win a Tony and I think an Emmy for doing the same role. So I'm sure it's a juicy role, but yeah, that does definitely sting for Whoopi especially. I've seen the Be Kind Rewind episode on that, and Oscars, please stop doing career awards. Like, just take the L's. Please.
I think the Oscars is very, excuse my language, stupid when it comes to awards. Like, Ingrid Bergman was not nominated for Casablanca, and that's probably her most iconic and recognizable role.
My philosophy on the Oscars is the Oscars are bullshit until the person you like wins. And I mean, this one also unfortunately repeated history in that it did get Danielle Brooks a well-deserved Best Supporting Actress nomination, but I'm trying to remember if there were any other. No, there were not any other nominations, which in rewatching this movie, I'm flabbergasted by, because this is such a well-made movie musical.
I think honestly, it was a big year for film in 2023. It was such a huge year. Like there were plenty of great films because there was The Holdovers, which I love. There was Anatomy of a Fall. Past Lives is also a great film. There was just so many. It's just like I guess like I understand, but I feel like it's like still I feel like there could have been more nominations at least than just one. I felt like that was a huge snub.
You could have put them in like costume design or sound design, production design. Honestly, I probably would have given this one a directing nomination because Blitz the Ambassador, or is he going more frequently by Blitz Bazawule now? Either way, he's an amazing director, and the way he films musical numbers especially, the choreography is captured so well. I love the moment when Celie is singing about seeing Olivia again and she's dancing in the waterfall with those other women and they kick up the spray. That's one of my favorite dancing tropes, is kicking up a spray of water, and it's gorgeous.
Can I just talk about the controversy with this film, especially with casting Nettie?
Go right ahead.
So there has been controversy with the casting of Nettie because Nettie is supposed to be the pretty one. She's the one that Mister originally wants to marry, but he has to marry Celie. And there was controversy because Nettie in this version is light skinned because Halle Bailey plays her, and in the original 1985 film version, she is dark skinned, and I believe in the novel she is described as similar to appearance to Celie, but again prettier. So I feel like in the novel, I think it's more about featureism in terms of Nettie having more like European and softer features than with skin color. It is controversial because in the Black community, colorism is very rampant. I've heard even from like Black men and Black women that like I don't want to marry a dark skinned man. I don't want to marry a dark skinned woman because I don't want my children to come out dark skinned, or I want to marry someone with like good hair. It's just a lot of that in our community. I can understand that if it did hurt people with the casting, but I personally think it does make sense with the story, especially during that time period, because Color Purple, at least the first few chapters, takes place from the 1900s to the 1910s. It takes place over 40 years, and especially during that time, there was a ton of colorism in the Black community. I would say even more so because it seeped into sororities. Infamously, in the AKA sororities, there was a paper bag test, and if you were darker than a paper bag, you were not allowed into sororities or even certain parties, or even in like entertainment, you weren't like I wouldn't say you weren't allowed on stage, but you weren't given as much attention on stage even. So I think for me it makes sense, and for me I'm not uncomfortable with the casting because I understand, but I understand like for other Black people it would make them uncomfortable. I am not the voice for like the whole Black race.
So I want to see if maybe I've got like a little this is sort of a situation of depiction versus endorsement and whether it equals one or the other.
Yeah, I would say so, and also like with the author's intention too, because Alice Walker was involved with this film, so I feel like she might have had a say with casting as well. Maybe, I'm not sure, but
possibly we can't know what's going on in everybody's head. Like when you first said there was a controversy, I thought we were going to talk about how like Warner Brothers was kind of giving this movie the shaft and they weren't getting dressing rooms during rehearsals. Actors weren't getting driven to and from, and they had to go to Oprah, who was in the original 85 movie and was one of the producers. They had to go to Oprah to try to get these situations fixed. And good on Oprah. Taraji P. Henson especially was like, do not pit Black women against each other. Oprah was the one who was helping us. I'm like, yeah, I'm a little more concerned about, Steven Spielberg being a producer on this movie and he's not helping. Like, if you're gonna be Steven Spielberg, you could do a little more with who you are,
Absolutely.
Although I am also just continually pissed at Steven Spielberg, and I probably will be pissed at Steven Spielberg for the rest of my life over casting Ansel Elgort in West Side Story.
Yeah, that one was also snubbed a lot in awards. I think these are both great movies. I think if this was another year, I feel like if this were shelved for this year or something, I feel like it would do a lot better with awards. But I don't know.
It's possible, but then the politicking around awards bait movies just can be an entire podcast unto itself. Getting back to the movie itself, is it weird or bad that I think I liked this better than the book? Like, it could just be a primary bias because I saw this before I read the book, and so this is sort of the first version in my head, but I don't know. I feel like there was a lot more direction to this than there was to the book, and I'm an autistic little dumbass who needs much more guidance in my life, so having a more driven narrative. I think the problem with the book for me is that it's in this epistolary format. It's written continuously as letters, so it's much more about Celie reacting to stuff than watching it happen to Celie. Whereas in the movie, we're watching it play out in real time and we get to see Celie's journey in a more active light.
I don't think it's weird because I think it's just how you as a viewer enjoy it. I can understand reading the book it not being enjoyable for people because for one it's a very depressing novel. The first few sentences is about how Celie is sexually abused by her father or who she thinks is her father at that point. So I can understand why it can be a very daunting read, especially since it's through letters and it might not be interesting for people because, again, the main protagonist is not seeing it we're not in the protagonist's shoes really seeing it happen. It's after the fact and we're just reading about what happened through the character's lens. Yeah, I can understand why. And also the novel is darker in some aspects. I don't think the movie touched on this, but in the novel, Nettie marries the man, the couple that she's on a missionary with. The wife dies from a terminal illness, and Nettie marries her husband after she passes away.
Yeah, there's a lot more of Nettie in the book and Nettie's letters and her life as a missionary, which honestly was kind of the most fascinating part of the book to me, partially because it wasn't in the movie and partially because it's, I think, getting a lot more into Alice Walker's insights as a writer and her philosophies and exploring what it means to be a victim of colonialism and also experiencing colonialism in real time. And I'm getting incredibly pretentious as I'm talking about this, but it was engaging to me, I think, primarily because it was something I hadn't already seen as much of in the movie. But then the bits that they do adapt into the movie, like that part where Celie's walking through the woods and there are British colonial soldiers running by on horseback. That's such a cool thing to do in a movie musical. I love when movie musicals take advantage of the medium of film to do what you can't do on a stage. It's so cool.
It is. I love it when directors are not ashamed that they're directing a musical. I think that's a problem with a lot of directors directing musicals nowadays. It's they're ashamed and they don't really want to direct a musical, but it's no, you have to go all out. It's a musical. We as the audience are supposed to suspend our disbelief.
But I mean, even then, the marketing team didn't really give this movie a chance to be a musical. Like, all you really got was a bit of I'm Here,
Yeah.
which is a phenomenal song. Fantasia sings the hell out of it.
Yeah, I was excited when Fantasia was cast. And I was excited that Taraji was cast. I thought she did a really great job in this movie.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm always surprised because, like, I've seen Taraji P. Henson do other musicals. I really liked her in the live version of Annie. And then I'm like, oh, right, you can sing. Why do I always forget that?
Can we talk about Suge Avery's character?
She is so interesting in
She
this
is a
movie.
very interesting character.
Bisexual queen, happy pride.
I always liked Suge. I always thought she was interesting. I thought it was interesting in this version she didn't call Celie ugly when they first met. I thought that was an interesting change because, well, in the novel and in the original 1985 film, when Celie, I think, like, lets Suge into the home, you're so ugly to Celie. Like, that's the first thing she says to her. And I don't know if it was because, you know, that's too hurtful and that's too harsh. And it's like, why would she say that? But I did think that was an interesting change. I don't really know how to feel about it because I guess that can be interpreted like once she finds out that Mr. is being abusive towards Celie, she's softer to her, and then they eventually fall in love. But
I could be misremembering because I did just read the book very recently, but I feel like Suge Avery was a little darker skinned in the books than she was in the movie. So I think it might have also in the book been a situation where she was seeing someone who was on more equal ground with her physicality wise, and so she had to assert her dominance somehow, like reinforce that she's top of the pecking order. Whereas if you cast someone like Taraji P. Henson who just exudes this charisma and confidence, she doesn't need to do that because she knows that she's awesome and she's secure in her awesomeness.
yeah, because when I first watched the film in December, I was really wrestling with that change. I was like, I don't know if I love that. Like, I don't know how to feel about that. But I think Suge's relationship with her father is very interesting too. Her relationship with Mister is also because it does make you think like how like I wouldn't say how did they meet, like I could like guess that, but it's just like he's so it just makes me think about how like sometimes when you I've heard about this with couples and you know they break up, like how someone is just so good to someone else and they weren't like that to you.
I mean, I just assumed that the sex was really, really good. I mean, I can believe it. Coleman Domingo can get it.
He was great as Mister too. He was great. Everybody did a great job with this. Like even like Danielle Brooks was excellent. Halle Bailey was great. Was what she's given. The only reason I say that is because Nettie's not really in this film that much.
Yeah, I don't think there was a single bad performance
Yeah.
in this entire cast.
Harpo got a bit too. Harpo too. In in the musical version, he got a bit to do too. Corey Hawkins. What I like about The Color Purple story wise, it shows different forms of femininity, of black femininity specifically. Like you have Sophia who is very like sure of herself. She's not someone who would like let someone like push her around and like be abused. She's not someone who is controlled. I think this is more talked about in the novel, but Harpo and Sophia's relationship is peculiar for the time period, not because of like how dominant Sophia is compared to Harpo, but because of their roles as a couple. Harpo did I think more of like the domestic work, while Sophia was more like the hard laborer type. And they were happy until Mister came and ruined it, like he does with everything else.
Yeah, I feel really bad now because I just said I don't think there are any bad performances, but there's one person I feel really bad for mentioning it, but her as Squeak, Mary Agnes, like she's not bad, I don't think, but she's not quite on the same level as everybody else.
I almost forgot about Squeak.
I mean, the other thing is that she is such a small part of the movie that it is kind of easy to forget her until she pops up again, but then there are some moments when she has line readings, and I'm like, what was that the best take? Because I know she can do really well. I really liked her as Belle in that 30th anniversary Beauty and the Beast thing. I thought she was great there.
It's just like, yeah, I feel like Squeak's storyline was rushed, and I understand because she is an important character, even though she is a minor character. And I get it for time reasons; they can't really add like her storyline in there compared to the novel where she has so much like more to do, and she's much more of a contrast to Sophia. But yeah, I just thought that was very rushed and very weird where she says her name is actually Mary Agnes, because we don't really see like how the relationship, how controlling Harpo is over the relationship. Even in the original film, I think we see that a bit more, but it's still kind of rushed, I guess, for time. But yeah, what do you think about the men in this film?
It's all really good performances, but they don't have the same level of depth as the female characters do, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, or at least not an unintentional thing, and it's kind of refreshing given how often you have movies with men who have these rich complex lives and then woman is love interest. Like in that regard, I'm kind of all for it, but on the other hand, these are really talented actors, and so it's a little disappointing not to see them get a full trajectory. And the one outlier to that is Coleman Domingo, really, who gets that great arc at the end after Celie curses him, and he does start to go do right. Like the scene when he's in the immigration office trying to help get Nettie back to the US, Coleman Domingo plays a masterclass performance there. And so he's the only male character who gets like a proper beginning, middle, end to his character transformation. Whereas, like, it feels like Harpo went through like 5 different character changes, but he did it all off screen. I feel like he and Sophia ran an entire sitcom and we just didn't get to see it.
I'm gonna talk about why The Color Purple is so controversial for Black men. Well, Spike Lee did basically say, like when the original film came out, that it did make Black men look bad based on like their actions, like with how Mister treats Celie, how Harpo treats Sophia, how Harpo treats Squeak, how Albert treats his son. And I full-heartedly like disagree with that take, because I think if you actually have that take with The Color Purple, I don't think you actually like absorb the material correctly, or you might have to like watch it again, because I don't think it's endorsing that behavior or saying that, like, Black men act like this and blah blah blah. I think both mediums, the novel and the original film and this film, I think it's really about breaking generational curses and trauma, especially with Black men in terms of sexism and just misogyny and abuse. You can always break the cycle, because the men in this film break the cycle. With Mister, it's because Celie cursed him, but he still broke the cycle. He still did right at the end, regardless if that is like earned or what. Like, that's up to the audience. Harpo repaired his relationship with Sophia and even allowed Squeak to just be who she is, be Mary Agnes. I think also, well, Albert didn't learn anything, but
You mean Alfonso?
Alfonso, oh my god.
Celie's stepfather.
I was talking about Mister's father.
Oh, right. R.I.P. Louis Gossett Jr.
Apparently, Mister's father doesn't have a name, but I think the story is just about breaking, for men especially, just breaking the curse and breaking all the wrongdoing and being raised to be a Black man in society, which means reinforcing the patriarchy, and the patriarchy is a very abusive structure. That was very long-winded, but
No. I'm with it. And I think that the film does do like a good job of communicating just how much that gets upended just in that dinner scene when Suge and Celie and Mary Agnes are heading off to Memphis and Sophia's in charge. And there's just a pants shitting look of terror on old Mr. Johnson and Harpo's faces because Sophia's in charge now. I'm like, yeah, this is the sitcom that I'm missing.
Did you think a Mister's arc was deserved?
I feel like that's kind of a hard question to answer. Given that I'm a Star Wars person, I'm very frequently getting into talks about redemption regards to like Anakin and Kylo Ren and all that sort of thing. And my position on redemption has always been that there is a difference between atonement and redemption. Your atonement is you recognizing that you have done wrong and taking steps to rectify that wrong, but you cannot gain redemption unless the one whom you have wronged forgives you. And so it is possible to be redeemed in the eyes of one person, but not another. So for this specific instance, I would say that Mr. took the steps to atone for what he did to Seely, and she accepted those steps. She was willing to forgive him, and in that respect, she has decided that he has earned his redemption, and arguably hers is the opinion that matters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's also coming from personal experiences where I have absolutely been a fucking asshole to people, and I have tried to make amends to them in some form or another, and they haven't given me their forgiveness, and I'm like, I have to accept that. I have to understand, and I have to be a better person by understanding that they do not owe me their forgiveness. That's not how it works.
I do agree with you. I think it's at the end of the day, to it's not up to the audience. It's up to Seely, the main protagonist, and she accepts every wrongdoing that Mister has done to her, and every step that he took to right that wrong for her to forgive. I also think with this story in the Black community, forgiveness is a very complicated topic because it is actually a theme in a lot of Black stories, forgiveness and redemption, especially in like older Black stories. I know Fences has the same, not mentality, but kind of the same theme of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And I just watched it recently. I think Fences is a little old fashioned with how that's presented, but it's just something that I also noticed with a lot of Black stories, forgiveness and whether we should forgive and move on, and like how can I word this? Who has the right to forgive in this situation? But I also wanted to discuss, what do you think Seely's sexuality is?
I think if I had to put a label on it, I'd say that Seely is a demi-romantic lesbian. I think that her romantic orientation is very thoroughly detached from her sexual orientation. And based on both the book and how this movie depicts it, it seems pretty clear to me that she's never had any kind of interest in men, even taking into account the fact that she probably has a very traumatic past. Because I don't want to perpetuate the idea that lesbians are lesbians because they're traumatized by male sexual predation, but I think Celia seeking out connections with women and much more easily forming connections with women, like even the fact that she more easily bonds with Sophia than Harpo, to me suggests that she has more of an affinity for women than she does for men. And I think that her being demi-romantic is linked heavily to her trauma of losing people and not wanting to let those connections form until she knows that there's a better chance of them not breaking. So like in the book, Shug Avery has like another fling with a guy towards the end that kind of devastates her because it's making her feel abandoned. And that to me reads very, no, you're my person. We have a connection. Please, no. Which is one of the most demi-romantic things I could think of. And like I already said, Shug Avery, bisexual queen.
I think her sexuality is kind of unlabeled, and the reason I say that, I think she just wants love regardless. I think the reason she doesn't have really as much as a affinity or attraction to men is because, like, again, from trauma. Like, I'm sure if, well, I'm not sure, but maybe if a guy did come around and was actually, like, probably just nice to her, she probably would also be romantically attracted to him. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not Alice Walker, so don't at me. But I don't really feel comfortable labeling it because I don't really know. I just think she just wants to be loved and she just wants to love somebody, in my opinion.
I mean, I think those are both valid interpretations.
No, like, I agree with yours too.
I mean, it's also like interesting when they're doing the musical number at the movie theater. What About Love? I think that's what it was called. It was very interesting to me that when they were dancing, Seeley was the one taking the lead in the choreography, the part that would normally be for the quote unquote man, because that's kind of a reverse from how a lot of the movie shows it as Suge driving their relationship. So I thought that was like a really interesting way to show that this is Seeley taking control of a part of herself.
Yeah. And I also did enjoy how in this version it's more blatantly queer. In the 1985 version, Seeley and Shug do have a relationship in the 1985 version. It's just the scene after the fight at the bar and they go to Shug's place. They kiss and that's kind of it. Like, it's not explicit like in the novel that they did have like sexual intercourse. In this version, it's very blatantly clear that like, yes, they are in a relationship. And I remember people were freaking out that they're gay and I'm like, did y'all not read the novel? What were you doing? Even the original film, like, it wasn't blatant, but
Yeah, I don't want to like be dismissive and chalk it up to 80s, but also like 80s.
yeah.
It does not surprise me at all that the 80s, cuz like we just got off talking about Bound, which major lesbian vibes there, and they got so much pushback from that, and eventually they got away with it, but they were not going mainstream the way that Mr. Greatest Director of All Time was. Like, Steven Spielberg was much more a commercial director than the Wachowskis when they were just starting out.
Do you think Shug Avery is kind of like a shoe in for Alice Walker a little bit? Because I'm thinking about it now because they're both bisexual.
I think it's possible. I don't know enough about Alice Walker to know for sure, but it definitely seems like Shug is the character who's like, well, Shug, but also Nettie. Like, both of them seem to be the focal point for the more philosophical parts of the story. Like, Shug's the one who gives us our title drop and explaining that, the color purple exists in nature because God wants to give us little miracles, or however it goes. It's a really beautiful sentiment to me in some ways, and I like that, especially in this, they made Shug a little more spiritual to like let her espouse some of the more theological text from the novel. But I think Alice Walker did like an even split between her and Nettie for the characters that most closely reflect herself.
Yeah, it's just a question I always had. And I also have another question. Do you think Shug and Seeley's relationship will last?
Honestly, I think it will. I think that they, both in the novel and in this portrayal, they seem to have a bond that goes beyond their romantic attraction to each other. They understand each other on a very fundamental level that I think means they will be in each other's lives forever. What about you?
I was gonna say no. I think Seeley will probably be hurt by Shug constantly dating, maybe even marrying men. I think she'll be really hurt by that. And also, Shug has a disease. We don't know what it is. I actually like researched it. It could be tuberculosis. It could be a venereal disease. So it's possible she could also die. So that's also how like the relationship could like end. So from that standpoint, I don't think it will. I feel like Seeley might be with someone else though, probably a woman, but I don't think Shug and Seeley will last forever. I think they'll always love each other, but I don't think they will be in a relationship forever and ever. That's a very downer take, I know, but
That's definitely a take that's in keeping with the novel, and honestly, it may be the movie coloring my impressions of it, because the movie is much more feel good about the whole thing, but I can't help it. It's such a pretty movie. It's a gorgeous movie with gorgeous music and really good performances, and it makes me feel something, damn it.
That's fair.
I think you're more familiar with like the stage version than I am. Is there anything like from the stage show that you feel could have been kept in and would have made it better?
Oh, some of the songs, yeah. They cut "The Good Lord Works in Mysterious Ways." I think they cut a little bit of that in the beginning. They cut like a lot of songs. I think they cut like 13 or something like that. But I feel like they could have kept a lot of the opening because I feel like that would have been interesting to show on film.
Have you listened at all to the soundtrack? Because I've looked at that thing on Apple Music. It's like twice as long as the movie.
Yes. I'm just trying to look up the songs that they cut because I'm just trying to like jog my memory. They cut like the church ladies songs too. I understand because like that would I guess be weird to show in a film. The church ladies were in the opening, and they were the ones in the original in the Color Purple musical. They were asking silly questions about her baby, and then they were like gossiping to themselves like who's the daddy, who's the father. So they cut their songs out, and like I understand why, but I feel like that would have been like I guess kind of cool. I guess it could have been like a group chorus, but I don't know how that would have really worked out in film. And Somebody's Gonna Love You. I feel like would have been cute to have just kind of like a lullaby. Maybe like it could be like Celi's final goodbye to her baby. I thought that would have been cool. The Our Prayer, I think they do pray. I like for me, I don't think that's really a big loss. I think because we already see their relationship and we already know their plans for the future. Like we know Nettie wants to be like a school teacher and she's the educated one. We kind of know that already as the audience, so it's like I think that could just be explained in dialogue. I don't think you need a whole song for it. So yeah, some of these like big dog, which is like what Mister like tells Celie what to do. It's like we don't need that. Like we that can be explained in dialogue. Like a lot of this can just be explained in dialogue, and we already have that. There's also like the Dear God, which is the letters like Dear God Shug, Dear God Sophia. The Sophia one was cut, but it's kind of like it would be a few seconds anyway, so it's like they're not a huge loss, but
Yeah.
yeah.
As someone who hasn't seen the stage version of the musical, I can't really speak to that, but a part of me kind of wonders if maybe there was a little bit of a missed opportunity. Not in like the songs they cut, but I thought it was kind of cool that they had Whoopi Goldberg cameo as Celi's midwife at the beginning, and a part of me kind of wishes that they'd also gotten LaShawne's and Cynthia Erivo in there somewhere.
Yeah, I always think it's cute when films do that, like Jodie Benson in The Little Mermaid remake, literally passing off the fort to Halle Bailey. I thought that was cute.
That was so cute. But I also get like not wanting to pull focus, and Cynthia was probably in London filming Wicked at the time.
She's also gonna be in a film version of Prima Facie, the play.
Yeah, I saw that. Cynthia Erivo's booked and busy. You can't really fault her for that, but I don't know. Kind of disappointing not to have LaShawne's there.
Yeah, but I'm sure people would probably, because like, who's that? So maybe that's why, I don't know.
The disrespect on her. I love LaShawne's.
Me too.
I think she's great, and I wish she got more credit. Anything else you can think of?
Well, I know you did enjoy the film better than the novel, but is there anything in the novel that you wish was in the film, like just certain aspects?
I kind of think I would have liked to see a little more of Nettie and a little more of Squeak, just to, flesh them out a little more as characters. But on the whole, I'm pretty happy about it. I mean, I don't think my opinion matters as much as like what Alice Walker would think of this, but I can't really ask her.
Dear Alice Walker, just send her an email.
I think I want to go and read more Alice Walker books now.
Yeah, she's also very controversial too. There's a lot about her.
Yeah. Oh! So this episode is coming out late because I was trying to adhere to the social media strike for Gaza, and during that time I did more digging into exactly what controversies there were around Alice Walker, and two of them have muddied my feelings significantly. Namely, her support of J.K. Rowling spouting off transphobic rhetoric as recently as 2023, and doubling down on anti-Semitic conspiracy theories peddled by David Icke since 2012. While I maintain that being anti-Zionist does not make someone anti-Semitic, I know that there are unfortunately instances where there is crossover. Walker's views have been discussed in a lot more detail by people who are better educated in the subject than I am, such as Roxane Gay. And while I don't believe separating the art from the artist is possible, especially if the artist is still alive, and I only know when she started making these views public, not how long she may have held them privately, I still don't feel The Color Purple and its importance can be disregarded. But knowing is going to make future engagement with Walker's works as a whole more difficult to do.
I think The Color Purple, I think, is something every person should read. It kind of reminds me a lot of like Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye.
Oh.
I think it's a novel everybody should read, but it's a very hard read. I think it's a great piece of work, and I think it should be respected, and I do respect it. But I think it's okay if you never want to like read The Color Purple again because it's very hard.
I mean, I also at times feel that ways about the movies of Jordan Peele. It's like brilliant, phenomenal, so insightful. I kind of need a break. Which I know is counterintuitive to the philosophies of the people who are experiencing this kind of thing don't get a break.
Oh, we forgot to talk about Sophia as the maid for the mayor's wife.
Oh, God. That's such a hard turn in the middle of the story. Like, everything's... Like, I think that's another thing that makes the movie so effective is, like, we're on this pretty solid upswing. You know, Celie is discovering herself, becoming more confident in herself, and then she watches this moment of Sophia, the most confident take charge woman ever, just get her life ruined by some entitled racist bitch. And it's awful.
I thought it was a nice touch in the movie that they had Celie visit Sophia. I don't remember if that was in the novel. I know that was not in the 1985 film, but I thought that was a nice touch and it showed their friendship.
I don't think it was in the novel. I remember some mention of Sophia getting like a little time off for good behavior, but honestly, it's so effective to just have Sophia sitting there. And Danielle Brooks has so much going on her face without moving an inch. I'm like, God damn, it's heartbreaking.
I think it is a good not example, but a way to show the time period as well. I did like the way this film showed time and like how the time periods changed, like how the mailman came, how the mailman traveled. Because at first it was by bike, then it was by like a buggy, I think, and then it was like I think it was like an actual like car near the end.
Yeah, it might have been.
I thought that was a cool way to show like how the years pass. Like I like the way how this film shows time passing.
Yeah, and it does a really good job with like time passing through costuming too. If you want to see me lose my shit, get me started on Greta Gerwig's Little Women, because I'm like, that's not how fashion history works. But here they were going from the 1900s to the 1910s and 20s up through the 30s and 40s. And the fashion is impeccable at basically every point. I love it. I love it so much.
I loved it too.
Like the most anachronistic thing I think is Mr. coming out with those freaking mermaid pants. But they're so fucking funny. Seriously, how did this movie not have at least a costume nomination? It looks so good.
Because the Oscars are so unfair.
I know.
Award shows are so unfair.
Award shows are unfair, but we have our own metric here, and it's one very simple question. Is the Force with it?
Yes.
I love how I barely finished asking, and you were like, yes, absolutely. If you haven't seen this movie, check it out, and if there is a stage production near you, check that out. Also, advocate for pro-shot theater everywhere, please. Make theater accessible. Sid, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
No, just free Palestine, free Sudan, free Congo, and Haiti. Pay attention to the world around you. Donate if you can. Do anything to help. If you can't donate, just be good to each other.
Also, please mask up, because I don't know if you've seen, but COVID's coming back, and also there's bird flu now.
There's so much happening. You know,
the world is a bad, bad place. But let's try to make it better. And you can find me on the wider internet as La Femme Fictionale, including on YouTube, Twitter, and Tumblr, where you can also find the blog for this show. Our theme music is provided by Refractory Period, the two girls' one-beat synth-pop sensation. You can follow them on Instagram at Refractory Period the band. To further support this podcast, please subscribe to us on your platform of choice, leave reviews, consider joining Patreon, and share with your friends to boost our visibility. To further support this podcast, please subscribe to us on your platform of choice, leave reviews, and share with your friends to boost our visibility. And consider joining Patreon, where you can get early access to our bi-weekly recaps of The Acolyte as it airs. And now it's time to turn to the Chance Cube to decide where our journey takes us next.
Three.
Another 3! Oh my god! Which means next up is the Bushido Blade. We will see you all when we cover that movie. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, stay beautiful, and may the Force be with you.